listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by. On the morning shift.
Anything
could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
Hey everyone, good morning. Welcome to Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift. I'm AJ Walsh. Glad to be here with you. Thankful that you're here with us. We got a great show planned for you as usual. We had a great show yesterday for all of those who were able to join us. We had Chief Mitiga. It's always a great opportunity to have wonderful guests on, and in this case, there's no exception. Chief Mitiga was a great guest, and people had awesome questions for him, and he was very well spoken. And yeah, I think we're going to have him on again. I think we'll look forward to having him on as soon as possible. Again, whenever he's ready to come on. I had some glitches this morning I have to apologize for on getting the show up and running, and I apologize we're a little late. I had something that's never happened to me before. Something happened with my Mac computer. It said on my phone just as I was coming out to get everything started that I had a new Mac device come online, and should I accept it or not? I'm like, that's pretty worrisome. Someone's just coming onto my network with a new Mac device. I don't have a new Mac. So anyways, I open up my laptop and it's got this weird screen on it. It's all gray and it won't accept my my password to get in. So I had to just restart the computer from scratch. And so I'm not sure exactly what happened. If there's someone who's able to get into somebody's computer, well, I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's hackers that can do anything these days. But I hope that's not what it is. But it is what it is. I don't have the know-how to know how to prevent these kinds of things. But anyways, I don't have a new device on my phone, but apparently my laptop's acting like a new device. And anyways, so we're a bit late this morning. We're live on CKLU anyways. Better late than never. We're live on CKLU 96.7 FM and also streaming at cklu.ca. Click on the Radio Player Canada app. You can listen to us and stream us that way. You can also download the Radio Player Canada app, take us with you, listen to us anywhere, anytime on your favorite device. Also, we're live streaming at facebook.com/Sudbury News, youtube.com/Sudbury News. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, follow the channel and the page. Mainly comment. We'll do our best to get your comments up on the screen for those watching, read for those listening, and on demand, you can catch the show at those two platforms, along with twitter.com/Sudbury News, youtube.com/Sudbury News, facebook.com/Sudbury News, and Sudbury.news, which is our news aggregator. And that's where we're going to be getting our news headlines from today. But remember, Fridays is our focus on climate change information, to the which you won't hear on any other radio station or TV station. You may hear it on certain channels and pages on the internet, but that's about it. Coming from scientists, not all scientists agree on the climate. And so to get an alternate perspective, tune in each and every Friday here on the show, and we'll do our best to do that for you so you can get a more rounded, robust look at the climate and not just hear one particular side without any discussion. Here is where we have a discussion. It's your conversation on your station. And with that, let's dive in with a little bit of weather. Then we'll get your comments, news headlines, dive into our climate segment of the day, which I think you're going to like because it makes the connection with those that are out there who feel the world is overpopulated and the climate. And could there be a connection between the two? Could climate change and the agenda made to fight it be in line with those that want to depopulate the world because they feel there's too many people on it? So let's try and make that connection today if we can. And if you're interested in that, stay tuned because we'll have that towards the end of the show. But first, we'll dive in with a little bit of weather. We'll be back right after this. As usual, it's going to be a great show. And as usual, Sudbury Weather is brought to you by Duck Check. Visit them online at duckcheck.com. Give them a call at 705-4848 for all your residential, commercial, industrial duct cleaning needs. 9 degrees currently. Shallow fog, whatever that means, is out there. Today we can expect it to be mainly sunny and 25 degrees. With the humidex, it'll be 28, so rather warm. Tonight becoming cloudy. This evening, 40% chance of showers in the evening and overnight. Risk of thunderstorm. And the low will be 16. Saturday, cloudy with a 40% chance of showers and a risk of thunderstorm. High of 24. Humidex 28. So same temperature tomorrow. And then a 30% chance of showers on Sunday. Sunny on Sunday. 28 is your high. 40% chance of showers. Oh, sorry, that was Monday. So Sunday is 30% chance of showers. Sunny on Monday. 40% chance of showers on Tuesday. High of 27. 30% chance of showers on Wednesday, high of 23, and mix of sun and cloud on Thursday, high of 25. Again, that's your forecast. Now, whether or not that's going to be exactly what it is, we'll wait and see. Look at your satellite. You can see all that cloud activity with a lot of the precipitation coming in from the west. Should be here any second. And that's your Sudbury weather brought to you by Duck Check. Give them a call at 705-918-4848. Ask for Steve. And let them know that we sent you, and they'll treat you very well with $100 off your next duct cleaning and inspection, whether that's for residential, commercial, or industrial. They got your duct cleaning taken care of. They're the experts. They got the equipment. They got the know-how. They have the experience. Anyways, enough about that. Let's be back right after this with your comments, news headlines, and more right after this. Okay, we are back and you are with us. We have a group of you on this morning. Small group, but hey, there's a group nonetheless. Thanks for being with us. We had about 30 people on yesterday at one point with Chief Mediga. I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you haven't had a chance to see it, if you weren't on yesterday, I would very much encourage you to go and check out the show on demand. It was a great conversation with a well-spoken individual who is definitely on a mission to unite a lot of people in a positive way. So with that, good morning, Nana. Thanks for being with us. Our blessings to everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful day with a heart emoji, and the same to you, Nana. Marianne on Facebook, good morning, everyone from Barrie, liked and shared as usual. And Judy on Facebook as well. Good morning, Judy. Denise, blessings to everyone. Good morning to you, Denise. And Monique, good morning, Sudbury, with a peace sign, I believe, or a sunshine emoji, and my cool shades happy face emoji. Good morning, Monique. Thanks for being with us. And Denise says, August 31st isn't far away. I hope more people understood what's happening. Now, there's a mysterious statement there. So everybody look into August 31st to see what Denise might be referring to. I know I'm curious, and there's always something on the horizon, good and not so good. Good morning, Miles. Get my messenger call on CBC propaganda this morning. It's about the closing of drug sites. Yes, that'll be our first headline that we'll cover this morning, and it is propaganda for sure, and I'll even point out how that is this morning. It's political, so, and the CBC has often shown that they have a bias towards certain political leanings, right? Denise says, 4 years, I'm still blocked from going live. There are masterminds behind the internet. I am sure of it. 4 years. Now that's a long time to not be able to live stream. Wow. Well, I don't know if there's anything I could look into for you on my end. I know very little about those types of things, of the mysteriousness behind these big platforms. You hear me talking about it each and every day, including today with my laptop. Marianne, the joys and the woes of technology, everything is hackable, unfortunately, yes. Even a Mac. Monique Grand Rising. It looks like a sunshine emoji with a heart emoji. Much appreciated. Hope you're having a good day, Monique. And Denise also says, I've been following this fella for a while. He's all North America. It's not climate change. It's man-made. And she shares a link for everybody to go to and watch if you're interested in that, because it's keeping with the theme of the show, the focus on Fridays on climate and the alternate perspectives, right? Not just the one perspective you get from mainstream media and governments and corporations. Wow, surprise, surprise. They're all saying the same things. I wonder where you heard that before. Miles, topic forest fires. There have been massive forest fires in our forests for thousands of years. I remember as a kid, there were more fires in Northern Ontario then in the 60s and 70s than there are now. Okay, thanks for that, Miles. And again, I don't dispute that, even though, again, people hearing you say that would probably say, how could you say that? I hear every day on the news how they're getting worse and worse and worse, So that's a different perspective for sure. And I wonder why. Linda, good morning to you. Have a great Friday as well, Linda. Thanks for being on. Sharing is caring, correct. Denise, thank you very much. He's not alone in that journey. Many people did not go to the Freedom Convoy because we had hackers that knew that it was driven by the Masons. And we know that the Masons are the problem of what we're experiencing. They are the fingers of the elite. Okay, and again, on this show, there's no subject that we're afraid to tackle. And now I would just suggest that they're one organization of many that can be used for political purposes and have been and probably will be. However, I don't think they're the only ones. I'll just put that out there. But yes, they are a tight-knit group of mainly elite people from different areas of the world, so they can be united on a lot of ways, right? So it can be exploited. We are a nation within, and there is a little bit more to that, but that's all we'll go into for now. We are a nation within a nation, and it's time we start acting like it. Our original people protect source, something we should have done a long time ago, and not includes our children, and this is Denise, and putting women in a better place as well. We don't have to be what people tell us to be. Our authentic self should be fine. Think for yourself. Your heart will guide you. Your heart will guide you, and my best to everyone. Thank you very much, Denise, for that. There was a fire off Highway 655 yesterday. My understanding, it was under control. That's Marianne. And good morning, Claire. Thanks for being on. Hope you're having a great morning. Monique says, and they have been controlling the weather for a long time. And Mike, good morning to you. Good morning, friends. I hope you saw yesterday's show, Mike. And if you haven't, I would encourage you to go back and see Chief Mediga, who was a guest on the show yesterday. It was a really great interview. Had a lot of really powerful things to say. Marianne, starting to think it may be done on purpose, and I believe you're talking about the fires. And there are many who were caught for arson, even though the news really didn't accentuate that point. It's just always climate change. Everything's climate change, right? Your car broke down on the way to work. Climate change. You lost your job. It's climate change. Your favorite show was canceled. It's climate change. So climate change is a one-stop shop for all kinds of things these days. You can blame it on climate change, so maybe it gives you a good scapegoat, So maybe try that next time something doesn't work for you. Just, I'm late for work. Sorry, climate change. And the boss will say, no problem. Denise says that may be so, but we're also charged over 35 people in Ontario for us. And so there's a lot of arson going on. Yes, for sure. There's definitely a lot of arson. A lot of people have been arrested for fires. And how are you going to catch somebody in the middle of Timbuk 3 who started a fire? Like, really, honestly? So are we really going to know how many arsonists started these fires? And just talking like this makes some people's blood boil. Like they can't accept the fact that the narrative isn't exactly what they hear every single day on mainstream news. Because mainstream news is political. Why is it political? Because political people are giving them the money to run. The government is paying the media to function. So why wouldn't it be leaning towards what the government's narrative is? Just think for yourself. Whoever pays your salary, whoever gives you money to do what you do, you're beholden to them, right? So you wonder why you don't hear these other perspectives. Well, it's whatever the government wants you to say. Tomorrow, if they just change their tune, that's what the news is going to do. If they just changed full circle and started saying something else, well, the news will just go along with it. They'll find a way to make it make sense for you. That's what they do. Spin Doctors, not only a great band, but people in the news know how to do it. We might have an example of that this morning for you. Climate change equals taxpayers' money because taxing people will make the weather better. And that's Marianne. And yeah, and people with an agenda could have possibly paid people to go and do this because their agenda is worth so much and it means power at the end of the day. Like people who are seeking power with this want it to be Armageddon, Climategeddon, or whatever you want to call it. So that way, but that way they can push forward their agenda. Crazy thing on 69, people going in different directions. LOL. Okay. Thanks, Bob, for that and catching me off guard while I read your comment. Okay, maybe our counselors, this is Miles, who are listening can tell us about the Ford government's proposal to municipalities to build residential hubs and recovery programs for homeless drug addicts. That is a question mark after that, for sure. We will. That is one of the top stories of the day. Good morning to you, Jerome, from beautiful sunny Barrie. We have a couple people now joining us from Barrie now that you're down there. So let's head on to our news headlines of the day, coming from our news aggregator at Sudbury.news. It's the place you go to get the most current, up-to-date local news, all the headlines congregated into one location. Look at that. The failed policy, Ford demands safe injection site closures. Look at that. That's from Sudbury.com. So, Premier was in the city to promote funding for shipbuilding industry. So that's the only subheadline from Sudbury.com on the fact that Premier Ford is putting an end to safe injection sites. And we'll talk a little bit about the pushback in Sudbury from that in a few moments. But the railway shutdown, this is from CBC, has already had an impact on Ontario's forest sector. A shutdown of Canada's two largest railways has already created a logistical nightmare for Ontario's forest sector, according to the president of Ontario Forest Industries Association. Yes, we're going to see more and more of that. Apparently, I heard yesterday on the news that the supply chain takes about 6 weeks to recover from 1 week of shutdown. So if the rail takes a week, which it probably will, like even if they're going into arbitration now, we'll talk about that. So the government is deciding to force them to sit down and make an agreement to get the rail back on track, pun intended. So the reason why they're doing this is because a supply chain shortage or stoppage from rail shipment in Canada will cripple our country and an economy. Everything to do with our country will cripple it. But they waited until the deadline and after the deadline to start. So there's going to be a shutdown to some degree, and it's going to have effects, economic effects. Now, they said they wanted to leave the negotiation right to the end, to let them negotiate. If I had anything to do with it, I'd be like sitting down with them at the table saying, no, I'm giving you all the time in the world, but we're not allowing this to come to a shutdown. We're just not allowing it because we can't. This is something that affects too much for whatever your reasons are that you cannot come up with something. And yes, Miles, Mike, and I didn't respond to your email when I sent you this breaking story the other day that you do support the new initiative from the Ford government to have these heart hubs in the city, which I really appreciate because there's such a political movement in our city where the NDP and the Liberals, they really support this safe injection harm reduction ideology. For some reason, it's part of their political ideology for some reason. And so there's organizations that are built around the funding that comes from the safe injection sites that are really pushing and trying to strike fear into people, saying people are going to die. People are going to die if we don't do this. What's going on? Meanwhile, we are going to have a more integrated approach and a more streamlined approach, and one that involves rehabilitation of people coming soon, which I really appreciate. So I don't know, what the deal is. It's going to save people's lives, but in the right way, not just save them in their addictions to not pass away, but actually save their life so they can live a life. That's important too, wouldn't you think? So the CPKC prepare to restart railways after Ottawa steps in to end the stoppage. Just after midnight Thursday, the two rail carriers locked out close to 10,000 employees, including engineers, conductors, dispatchers, and yard workers. That is Sudbury Star. So we're going to go back and forth from the CN to the closure of our safe consumption site to open Heart Hub, the new initiative from the Ford government. So group says still needs supervised consumption sites. Of course they still need it. Community drug strategy says it needs a complete range of services to deal effectively with the region's toxic drug crisis. It's because these organizations are built on the funding that was available at the time, right? So if funding changes and the protocol changes and they have to change what they're doing, it's a lot of work for them now to make proposals and things that are in line with the guidelines of the new funding. So it's going to mean a lot of work, and maybe some people are going to lose their jobs. Some people are going to transition to the new format, but they're going to push back nonetheless, right? So this is one of them pushing back, and you can read that story in the Sudbury Star. Rail impasse stresses Sudbury business community. For sure, supply chain issues could up costs for consumers, fears the chair of the chamber. Of course, it's going to up prices. And even if it's not a direct correlation, businesses can up their prices saying, oh, it's because of the supply chain thing now. So you don't realize what you're dealing with here. It gives businesses an excuse now to up their prices. Like, this is just reality that works because people will pay extra because there's an excuse. There's a reason now. It's because of the rail stoppage. That's why I'm charging you more for this item. And you got to go, oh, okay. I can't argue against that. And that's a real temptation that business owners face when these things happen. The third stabbing in Sudbury this week. Police in Greater Sudbury have made an arrest in the third stabbing attack in the city this week, this time on Elm Street. That story is from CTV, Northern Ontario. You'll want to check that out. Why are there more stabbings in Sudbury? I wonder why there's more stabbings, more crimes, and things like this. I wonder if there's any link to the way that we are handling the drug crisis at the moment. I wonder if there is a link. It's not making anything any better in terms of that, I can tell you that. So I'm all open to try something new here that also includes rehabilitation. Just trying to see if there's anything else here that I saw this morning on our Sudbury.news. Well, Cinefest is coming up for those who want to get out and enjoy film festival, Cinefest. It's September 14th through 22nd. There's all kinds of stories on all of the local news outlets about Cinefest. Check it out. You definitely don't have an excuse saying, oh, I didn't know about Cinefest, or I didn't know what was going on. It's in all of the news outlets. So consumption site, this is from Sudbury.com. Consumption site advocate, expect overwhelmed ERs, ambulance delays as well. Sudbury harm reduction advocate says province's decision on supervised consumption sites will cost taxpayers more money and also increase spread of communicable diseases. Wow, there's another fear tactic thrown out there, right? It's going to increase communicable diseases if they stop safe consumption sites. And it's going to cost taxpayers more money. Well, I'm all for costing more money if we're going to get our brothers and sisters who are struggling out there off harmful drugs and not just consuming them safely. I mean, that's what I'm all for. Evelyn, good morning. I'm late again. Not a problem. We're just going through some of the news headlines. We're going back and forth between safe consumption site and the new initiative for these heart hubs from the Ontario government to support rehabilitation of people rather than just safe consumption. Harm reduction versus rehabilitation. It's two different ideologies. They're kind of going back and forth here, but it looks like the rehabilitation one is going to be tried out in Ontario now. See how that goes. Again, if they don't do it right, well, it could fail just as badly as safe consumption, in my mind. But here, back to the a local spin on the rail strike. Almost 200 Sudbury area workers affected by the rail shutdown, although some, this is from Sudbury.com, although some locomotives are still moving in Greater Sudbury area, they're being operated by managers who are not part of the union, obviously, with approximately 200 workers from Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City. Part of a national rail shutdown began this morning. So it's affecting Sudbury in those ways. So a little bit look at your local headlines. Now let's switch gears a bit to our Climate Friday. Climate Focus Friday on climate. You can tell I was a little baffled this morning with the computer shutting down and stuff. I'm having a hard time getting my words back from starting off the show like that. But this is really great, and I know you're going to want to stick around for this take on the connection between those who are in prominent positions in the world who feel that the world is overpopulated and how climate change or the climate initiatives to fight climate change are in line with their policies or their reasoning to get rid of people. So how could this be? How could we thought we wanted to stop climate change so that way we can continue to be on the planet and have people on the planet. We didn't think climate change would be used to depopulate the world. But apparently there's a great argument that Reason Magazine makes here. So we'll be back right after this.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you!
When Greta Thunberg drew national attention for her comments at the UN in the summer of 2019, some praised her performance as a stinging rebuke to the rich and powerful for failing to put the survival of the planet above their own needs.
At just 16 years old, our next guest is already changing the world.
Pick for the 2019.
She became the biggest voice on the biggest issue facing the planet.
Others saw the exploitation of a young woman with emotional problems for propagandistic ends.
A mentally ill Swedish child who is being exploited by her parents and by the international left.
But there's no question that Thunberg's style of environmentalism, strident, urgent, and critical of global capitalism, has gained a strong foothold in contemporary politics. A 2019 paper from the journal Biosciences, co-signed by more than 11,000 scientists, asserted that planet Earth's population must be stabilized and ideally gradually reduced, and some politicians have questioned the morality of having children at all.
There's scientific consensus that the lives of children are going to be very difficult, and it does lead, I think, young people to have a legitimate question. Is it okay to still have children?
Educating everyone on the need to curb population growth seems a reasonable campaign to enact. Would you be courageous enough to discuss this issue and make it a key feature of a plan to address climate catastrophe?
Well, Martha, the answer is yes.
Fears of overpopulation and ecological disaster are also beginning to manifest on the far right, mixed in with an anti-immigrant animus. The logic was expressed in its most dramatic and twisted form in the 2019 manifestos of mass shooters in both New Zealand and Texas.
If we can get rid of enough people, he wrote, then our way of life can become more sustainable.
Whether contemporary proponents of these ideas know it or not, they are all intellectual heirs of the misguided 18th century thinker Robert Thomas Malthus, who believed that when human population increased, famine and environmental destruction would ensue.
Malthus argued that population would always outstrip food supply because population would grow at exponential rates, whereas food supply could only grow at what he called arithmetic rates.
Reason's science correspondent Ron Bailey is the author of the 2015 book End of Doom.
He didn't recognize that, in fact, crops and livestock are also populations, that they can also be exponentially increased at the same time as a human population was. And that's exactly what happened. Basically, the Malthusian prescription turns out to be completely wrong.
In the contemporary world, Malthusianism was most famously expressed through the work of ecologist Paul Ehrlich, especially in his 1968 book, The Population Bomb.
The only hope that there is that we will be able, at least in the United States, through the political process, to get a government that's courageous enough to say, look, we're overpopulated and we have to have population control and start moving in that direction.
He predicted that through the 1970s and 80s, hundreds of millions would starve to death. He compared humanity to a cancer, writing that we must shift our efforts from treatment of the symptoms to the cutting out of the cancer. Ehrlich, who still holds an endowed professorship at Stanford, didn't respond to our interview request. His proposed solutions included taxing diapers, subsidizing vasectomies, and even spiking food aid and water supplies with sterilizing drugs, and then holding a lottery for access to the antidote. Similarly, ecologist Garrett Hardin in 1968 compared humanity to overbreeding cattle, writing that the freedom to breed is intolerable.
The only way to make this system work is to have the family be willing to give up one of its former freedoms, namely the freedom to determine how many children it was going to have.
Ehrlich would turn out to be as wrong-headed as Malthus. Over the next half-century, calories available per capita steadily increased in just about every region of the world, thanks largely to improved agricultural techniques and technology.
Humans were not only consumers, we're also producers. We're able to create new things, to use resources in better and better ways over time. Human creativity can overcome the problems that Malthusians think that we're going to be suffering from overconsumption. We're using fewer and fewer resources to get more and more value over time.
And yet world hunger is yet to be eradicated, with the UN reporting that about 10% of the global population is undernourished. And perhaps it's true that past trends don't predict the future.
That's a lot of people. How are we going to feed them all?
Karen Pitts, who is a member of the Sierra Club and ran a Northern California subcommittee on population growth, is concerned that the world won't be able to accommodate a population that's expected to peak at 11 billion by 2100. She became interested in the topic after a trip to China in 1996.
As you flew over the country, every space was taken up by houses and housing. They are overpopulated. Whether or not they produce enough food is a big question, and we really can't take the risk of being wrong.
While it's true that farmers will have to become 70% more efficient over the next 30 years to feed the growing population, the technology already exists to accomplish that goal. If all farmers were as efficient as U.S. corn growers, the world could feed 10 billion people today on half as much land. And as humanity continues moving into cities, the environment will likely be better protected, Bailey points out, because this allows for the restoration of forests and other ecosystems on the land migrants leave behind.
Something like 90% of people will be living in cities by the end of the century. If that is the case, that'll be less than 2 billion people living on the landscape, which means that there'll be far more scope for forests to return, for biodiversity to flourish, and we'll be using a lot less resources over that time.
But today's Malthusians are most concerned about the disruptive effects of climate change. Citing global warming, documentarian David Attenborough described humanity as a plague upon the earth.
I can't think of a single problem that wouldn't be easier to solve if there were less people.
And the Biosciences paper, signed by 11,000 scientists, projects total societal collapse if population isn't managed properly.
We scientists have a moral obligation to clearly warn humanity of any catastrophic threat.
It is more severe than anticipated, threatening natural ecosystems and the fate of humanity.
There's a catastrophizing, apocalyptic undercurrent.
Ted Nordhaus, who is a founder of the Breakthrough Institute, which advocates technological solutions to environmental problems, believes the environmental movement has long been hindered by its anti-growth paradigm.
Conventional environmental ideology posits human development and environmental protection oppositionally, and I have exactly the opposite view.
Nordhaus says that the most effective way to deal with climate change is by promoting policies that accelerate economic growth.
If you're really serious about accelerating the decline of fertility rates and the peak and stabilization of global population, you need to accelerate economic development for certainly probably 3 or 4 billion people over the next 3 or 4 decades.
Most of today's environmentalists don't openly advocate for the draconian population control measures pushed by Ehrlich and other Malthusians in the 1970s. Karen Pitts says she just wants more sex education and greater access to birth control in the developing world, pointing to a project she participated in with Tanzania's local population.
I have introduced contraception. We put tablets over there that they could use, plus being able to administer family planning. And the contraception rate went from about 25% to over 54%. Surprisingly easy. Those women wanted family planning.
Funding greater access to birth control and education for women in developing countries was also a recommendation of the Biosciences paper, and it's a policy agenda of the UN and leading NGOs like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Nordhaus says such measures can help at the margins, but ultimately miss the big picture, which is that as wealth increases, fertility rates naturally fall as families invest more resources in fewer children.
The real drivers of long-term fertility decline and population stabilization around the world are just kind of garden variety economic development, which a lot of the same people signing those documents are actually saying is the problem.
The Biosciences paper argues that economic growth is driving overconsumption of resources and says our goals need to shift from GDP growth and the pursuit of affluence towards sustaining ecosystems.
As soon as we find new ways to do it, our consumption increases. That's the problem.
Pitts is right that people in wealthier societies tend to consume resources and generate greenhouse gases at rates that are orders of magnitude higher than those in the third world. But Nordhaus points out that when poor societies become wealthy, there are more people positioned to help solve environmental problems in the only way that really works, with new technology.
Environmental discourse has been overly focused on consumption. Technology is one of the key things that mediates the relationship between affluence and consumption and impacts. Wealthier, more developed societies are both better positioned to adapt to problems like climate change and climate impacts. A Category 5 hurricane creates a lot more devastation and a lot more loss of life and human impact in a poor society than in a rich society. They're also better positioned to develop and deploy new technology. Most of the success we've had in deploying nuclear or other clean energy technologies is actually in contexts where energy demand is growing quickly.
And so Nordhaus advocates for greater reliance on clean, abundant energy like nuclear power to fuel advanced economies towards possibly innovating even lower impact alternatives. But the third world may still need to rely on traditional fossil fuels on its path to prosperity.
Certainly over the next 3 or 4 decades, a lot of development, particularly in poor countries, is still going to be fossil-based. But it could be natural gas and not coal. Or in Africa, for instance, there's huge hydro capacity. In projections of sort of where populations are going to stabilize is really, when you get down to the bottom of it, is just ultimately a question of how rapidly Africa develops economically.
Nordhaus says that climate change will likely continue to present challenges for governments, individuals, and societies in the coming decades, but that it's better to conceive the problem not as an asteroid hurtling towards Earth, dooming us to extinction unless we thwart it, but as a global case of diabetes.
Diabetes, when it's treated, is manageable. Depends on what we do. And that's not just about cutting carbon emissions. It's also development makes us more resilient to climate extremes of all sorts.
Malthus wasn't completely wrong about the tendency of humans to deplete resources, says Bailey, but he failed to see that new ways of organizing society would ameliorate the problem.
Up until about 2 centuries ago, Robert Thomas Malthus was about right, is that in fact, population was regulated by food supply. And something changed. The world understood the role of property rights, for example, the rule of law, and this dramatically changed the incentive structures that people had. Activists like Naomi Klein, who argued their economic system is at war with our climate system. She wants to replace it with some sort of communitarian socialism. I would suggest to you that doing that would exactly bring back the Malthusian conditions that we used to live in. The thing that we need to do is proceed to produce more wealth, more technology in order to ameliorate and overcome the problems that climate change is going to cause. Her prescription is exactly the opposite of what needs to be done.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
That's the kind of claim that it doesn't actually enlighten at all. It doesn't actually tell us anything about the real choices we're faced with. What sorts of social and political and economic arrangements we ought to aspire to, for a planet that is pretty soon going to be 9 or 10 billion people. What it's not is going to be agrarian, traditional economies. With 10 billion people, if you ever tried to actually have everybody live that way, we would just cut down every forest in the world and then we would collapse. This is not real. These are fantasies. She's going to go back to Copenhagen and live a very righteous life as an international environmental celebrity in a wealthy city surrounded by extraordinary modern infrastructure, most of which was built with fossil fuels. That's Greta Thunberg's future, and I would like that future for everybody else on the planet.
Okay, now, did that resonate with any of you? I know it resonated.
How dare
myself.
she question the moon landing? And I was like, that's weird.
Okay. So
and then last year I went.
Questioning the moon landing. That'll be a show for the future, the moon landing. Many cool, different pieces of information on that over the years. And but that would get us off on a tangent. Anyways, these people don't like you. These people want you to die. These people don't want you to have children. These people want to live, but they don't want you to live. It's really bizarre. Malthusian theories of overpopulation and how the world won't be able to sustain itself if there's too many people on it. It's been so debunked, and debunked by very well-read, very well-educated people with experience, just in that segment we just watched, right? So this idea of getting to no carbon or carbon neutral and all these things, the fact that we're made mainly of carbon, I think almost tells you wink, wink, we want to get rid of carbon. It's in these people's minds, because the argument was just made very clearly. There are people out there who feel the world's overpopulated and they want you gone. They don't want to be gone. They want you gone. There's a lot of hypocriticalness to this, because you have Greta Thunberg, like he said at the end, she's going to go back to this modern city with these modern conveniences that are driven by fossil fuels. She's going to enjoy them. She's going to be a celebrity. She's going to enjoy the wealth that comes from that. She's going to enjoy the fruits. Meanwhile, if she was really putting her money where her mouth was, she'd be living off-grid somewhere in the jungle without any modern conveniences that come from fossil fuels, nothing made of plastic, nothing made of glass, nothing made, you know what I mean? Like that was made, she would do everything. And these people that talk about these things would have their own alternate, they have a lot of money. They have a lot of influence. They could make a whole society somewhere, like just pick a piece of land and show us how it's done. Show us how you can make a whole city run on wind. Like, show us. Like, let us live our life, because we don't believe you, first of all. We believe you're trying to kill everybody. But go show us how this utopian world looks. Like, go take a chunk of land somewhere with your solar panels and your windmills. And, and show us how you can be just as industrious and have a bustling society, just run on sustainable energy, Like, show us how it's done. Let's see if I can find this girl who was showing us how it was done. I can find the headline here. Yeah, here. So this girl was showing us how this was done. So these people would have their electric vehicles, right? So here's a girl who just bought an electric vehicle, and she's now having the harsh reality of what it's like to own an electric vehicle.
So I got a new car, electric. I'm charging it in my house right now. It's the first time I'm charging it. The battery was like at 30%. Do you know how long it's going to take for it to be fully charged? 73 hours. 73 hours.
Yeah, it's going to take this girl 73 hours to charge her brand new electric vehicle. Again, these kinds of things aren't that publicized on mainstream media, right? But here's somebody showing you that's her car. She just got in there and she's charging her up. So these are the realities. That's where we're at now. If you believe anything different, it's you're just buying into this fantasy fairy tale, utopian dream that's just dystopian at its core. But anyways, that's all the time we have for today on the show. I hope you had a good time. There's a lot of comments. People seem to be chiming in with different viewpoints on what we're talking about. Hopefully the rail strike will be done and we'll only face 6 weeks of disruption because of the 1 week of rail service coming to a halt, because it takes 6 weeks to get 1 week of disruption back to quote unquote normal. So yeah, hopefully that doesn't affect us all that badly. These are real things that are going on that you really have to pay attention to, that have a real effect on you, not what we were just talking about. But anyways, have a wonderful weekend, everyone. We'll be back same time, same place, on the same platforms, Monday morning, God willing. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, follow the page and the channels. And we appreciate you. And we'll see you on Monday. Have a great one, everyone. Ciao. Stay tuned now for Earshot Daily on CKLU 96.7 FM.
This is Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.